Asset protection and personal freedom are two things that any nomad capitalist values. That's why offshore trusts and second citizenship have been popular strategies for years. And yet there are a number of myths about how people use those two strategies together. Today I'm going to bust some of them. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. This is Nomad Capitalist, where we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. Those are the 5 magic words. You can learn more at nomadcapitalist.com. I had an article sent to me recently by someone who said, I think this maybe isn't correct. This is from one of these many websites that somehow seems to borrow a lot of our phraseology and a lot of our ideas and a lot of the exact wording that we use here at Nomad Capitalist. And they put together an article about offshore trust and second citizenship and why those two worked very well together. And certainly they can. You may need one and not the other. You may need both. You may need 10 different strategies to protect your assets and to protect your personal freedom. But certainly these are two good things. Now, what stood out to me very quickly, spoiler alert, was that this is a company that sells things in St. Kitts and Nevis. Now, I have no problem with St. Kitts and Nevis. We help people get St. Kitts and Nevis citizenship. We also help people get a lot of other citizenships. I have no problem with Nevis trusts or Nevis companies or bank accounts in St. Kitts and Nevis. There's a lot of different strategies they have there, and there are some good products they have available. But what I always push back on is, of course, every business has something to offer. They want you to be their customer. They want you to be their client. I'm in favor as a lifelong entrepreneur of sales. I don't like it when people are kind of like hiding behind the scenes with the one country that they offer and trying to push that on you as the ultimate solution that somehow magically works for anyone. You know, if you come to me and say, I want a second citizenship, the odds are rather high that you won't be getting recommended St. Kitts and Nevis citizenship just because there may be so many other options that could apply to you. And so I always caution people about that in the offshore world. But let's start with some of the claims that they are making in this article. Certainly, some of them have some facts to them, but I want to give you my thoughts. Number one, offshore trusts can't be touched by the U.S. courts. Now, the argument is if you set up a trust in Nevis, for example, or perhaps the best one, according to most, is Cook Islands. You've got a trustee. They've got to make the decisions. And some U.S. court says, you've got to do this or that. Oh, well, the trustee's not going to do that. Well, that's great, but I can give you 2 examples. One of the things that I imagine companies like this will often sell you on is get your St. Kitts and Nevis citizenship. You don't have to leave the U.S., you don't have to live there, you don't have to move there, you don't even have to go there. And that's true. You can do it all remotely. But your St. Kitts and Nevis citizenship certainly may protect you for travel or as a bug-out plan, plan B, whether it's for personal freedom, finances, as more taxes come down the pike, whatever. But it's not going to protect you as well as if you're sitting in the United States, because what can happen if you go to court and you're the perhaps beneficiary of this trustee? There have been situations where it's like, hey, you know what? I'm commanding you to tell so-and-so to do this, or else I'm going to put you in jail. There have been situations, I remember reading about a case many years ago, before I even got into Nomad Capitalist, where a guy owned his U.S. real estate in a foreign trust. And when the government came after him, said, okay, well, we're just going to take this property. We don't care what the foreign trust has to say or the trustee. It's really not a concern. It's on our soil, and we're going to take it because we can, and you owe us money. And so, this applies certainly in the United States, where it's like, hey, listen, you owe us tough luck. I'm sure it applies in other countries as well. But this idea that an offshore trust, you're totally impenetrable, certainly makes it easier, makes it harder for people to sue you. And I would tell you, as the goody two-shoes of the offshore industry, to pay your taxes and to comply with everything. And if you don't like paying U.S. taxes, then go where you're treated best. Find somewhere else to live, find another situation. Maybe St. Kitts and Nevis citizenship can help with that. But this idea that you're just totally untouchable as you sit in the United States with your foreign trust or sit in whatever your country is, I don't entirely believe that. Certainly you're making progress, but I don't like the idea that these people make it think like, just ignore the government. Yeah, good luck with that. The second thing is, once you put your assets in a trust, no one can take it. Now, there's some truth to that, but of course you can't convey assets fraudulently or once it's too late. And again, a local court could still nail you. So my challenge with so many folks in the industry is they make everything seem so effortless. There's no problems to worry about. It's what we've talked about with offshore companies in the past, where you'll call someone who sells offshore companies in Panama or in Nevis or in the British Virgin Islands, and they'll say, oh yeah, don't worry, we don't have any taxes here. Oh, there's no capital controls. There's no this, there's none of that. Well, where you're sitting running the business from is going to matter a lot more than whatever their rules are there. They're merely not complicating the situation, and yet people want to make you think, oh, it's so easy. There's a lot more at play here. Another claim that they made is no one can come after you after a year. Now, trusts are not our specialty, but I would say the government can. Right? In the trust work that I've seen, the government can. The government can do what they want if they want to. Here's another claim, is that you can save taxes by using an offshore trust. In many cases, offshore trusts, if you're in the United States and potentially some other countries, require you to file a form. You've got to report it. You're adding a little bit of complexity to your life. And certainly domestic trust salespeople in the United States, they make liberal use of that it's much easier to maintain from a reporting standpoint a trust in, let's say, Wyoming, which is one of the real tax havens in the world. Forget the UAE, forget Monaco. I mean, Wyoming, that's like the big one now, one of the big ones. So the idea that setting up a trust can absolve you of any tax obligation simply isn't correct. In fact, a filing is not the same as a tax obligation, but you are going to increase the amount of tax paperwork, maybe not substantially, but you're going to increase the amount of paperwork that you are dealing with when you're filing your tax return by virtue of having a foreign trust. And so the idea that this is a cure-all for not paying taxes is simply ridiculous. Then they start to get into, okay, you have the offshore trust, and of course they're pushing you on going to Nevis and St. Kitts and Nevis because that's what they have to offer you, right? If you go to a place that sells hamburgers, they don't want you to sell you a salad. Wouldn't you love a delicious, juicy hamburger? That's the answer to all your problems. And so now they get into, well, hey, now that you're down here in St. Kitts and Nevis, you might as well get a citizenship. Now, I'm all for offshore trusts. I think they're overprescribed. I think not everyone needs them, but I think a lot of people can benefit from them for estate tax purposes, for other tax purposes, like if you're investing in certain assets, like in the U.S. or the U.K., it can be beneficial if you're not living in one of those countries. There are a number of benefits, and there's certainly many benefits. We've talked about it in dozens, if not hundreds of episodes here, to have a second citizenship. But anyone suing your trust, let's assume you have the St. Kitts and Nevis, the Nevis Trust, the St. Kitts and Nevis Citizenship. Anyone suing your trust will be suing a citizen's trust, and it's always more difficult to sue a citizen as a foreigner. I guess there's some logic to that. I've known people who've gotten citizenship in a country, like in an Asian country, for example, where they're doing business because, yes, I want to be on par with the locals. In a Commonwealth country where you're suing someone's trust, where you're not a resident, where you're a citizen by investment, do you really think that some guy in California that lives next door to you in California, you're at some advantage against him? I really don't believe it's the same as if hey, we both I'm doing business in Peru and I'm a Peruvian citizen and maybe I get some benefit from that. I don't really believe in many countries you get the same benefit that's purported. I certainly think there are some countries, but I don't think this is one of the situations. And so I wouldn't go in and get a trust on the basis of, oh, I'm a citizen of the country my trust is in. Quite frankly, the idea of being a citizen of the country where you're trusted may limit your options, quite frankly. And to me, that's a little bit exaggerated. The next argument comes down to what we talked about with money. You can have St. Kitts and Nevis citizenship and a trust for about $150,000. Now, the citizenship itself, if you're single, is going to cost you a $150,000 donation. If you've got a family, it's going to cost you more. The trust is obviously going to cost you something. So I think they're like, okay, a good trust shouldn't be like $1,000. If you have special needs, especially if you're in the U.S., you want customized advice. And by the way, you not only want someone in the jurisdiction, but you want someone in the U.S. on the tax side advising you. You want multi-jurisdictional support. What they're also admitting, forget the fact that they think a trust is practically free, like you buy one, get one free, and they think that you're only single. They're also admitting that there's a lot of fees. St. Kitts and Nevis is going to have a legal fee. You have to hire a lawyer. You're going to have to pay due diligence fees. There's a number. We keep a list of all these fees here. The fees stack up. Some of them might be thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars. Some of them, might be $500. But the fees add up when it comes to citizenship by investment. And so this is what no one talks about. They're also not talking about how much it'll cost you to maintain your trust every year, because there are ongoing costs. And again, they're certainly not going to tell you what it costs to maintain in the target audience's country, where they're talking to Americans. What does it cost you to file everything, to keep the trust in compliance every year? Right? What does it cost to do everything in all the different jurisdictions? No one talks about that. And so I push back on that. And for everyone who's trying to compete on price and who makes it seem like it's cheaper than it is, understand how many fees there are that go into all this stuff. It is not cheap. This is why you have to have a need, and why, if you came to me, I would look at it and I would work with our various experts who do trusts and who do taxes and all that, and be like, is this worth it? Is there an ROI in this? Rather than just trying to sell a trust to everyone who comes to the door, as these people do. So there's a couple other things that come to mind as I think about this. My general philosophy is, if you want to be truly safe, and again, I'm encouraging you to comply with all your laws, pay all your taxes, and if you want to change the circumstances you're playing under, then find another place to go. But quite frankly, if I want the ultimate protection, I'm not just going to have a St. Kitts and Nevis citizenship. I'm going to want to be somewhere else, whether it's in St. Kitts or somewhere else where I get a residence permit in that St. Kitts and Nevis citizenship, etc. I'm also going to want to minimize my U.S. ties. One thing that comes up, not just with Americans, but with people from all over the world, from Latin America, from Asia, from all over, is they come and they say, I don't trust my country. And then I say, okay, you own 8 rental properties. Can we sell some of these? I mean, especially right now, it seems like asset prices, many people think are at a peak, right? Why not cash out potentially? Well, I kind of like my rental properties. So wait a second. You want to avoid the risks. And I say minimize U.S. ties because there are the most litigious country in the world. There's a lot more risks in the U.S. than you would find in other places. When I show people investment properties and I take them on tours, whether it's to live, to invest, whatever, in other countries, they're shocked at the things that people aren't getting sued for. And so if you want to avoid litigation in the first place, maybe best to minimize your U.S. ties, your U.S. assets, for a number of reasons. And so if you're saying, I don't trust my country, why do you want to keep all your assets there and think that a trust is going to solve all your problems? It might solve some of your problems, but it's not going to be a cure-all. Very few things are a cure-all. And again, someone whose goal is to sell you a particular jurisdiction or a particular product is, of course, going to find reasons why that jurisdiction and product solve everything that ails you. That's really not how it works. Don't stop now. We've got well over 1,000 more videos here on YouTube for you to watch and learn how to go where you're treated best. And if you want to work with Nomad Capitalist personally, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply, learn about our unique, tried and true process, garnered over years of experience, and learn how you can become our client.